Today we're going to be making a parsnip leek soup without potatoes. For this, we'll need parsnips, leeks, fresh thyme and rosemary, an optional anchovy fillet, garlic, soy sauce, vegetable stock, apple cider vinegar, and kale. And if you're new here, I'm Maggie. This is No Frills Kitchen, where I teach you how to cook with confidence with nothing fancy required. First and foremost, we're going to need to prep our parsnips and leeks. For the parsnips, peel them and cut them into equal bite-sized pieces. Parsnips can vary in size, so just make sure that you're cutting them into equal pieces and you should be just fine. Next, onto the leeks. First, cut off the tough green ends of the leek and discard, or freeze them to use in stock. Then, thinly slice the leeks and rinse them thoroughly, as they tend to collect quite a lot of dirt. Now, mince a bit of fresh thyme and rosemary, and that's all the prep work required. Moving to the stovetop, melt a bit of butter into a bit of olive oil. Once the butter is melted and the oil is shimmering, add your parsnips all in one layer, preferably with the flat sides facing down, and cook them until they are deeply browned on one side, about 5 minutes or so. Remove them from the pan and set aside. Add a bit more butter and oil into the pot and then add your leeks along with the fresh rosemary and thyme, and for some umami and depth of flavor, an anchovy fillet. If you want to keep this soup completely vegetarian, feel free to leave it out. The flavor just won't be as complex. And it's worth noting that the anchovy won't add any fishy flavor, just a little bit more nuance. Also, if you're enjoying this recipe, please give it a thumbs up, as it will help more people find my recipes. I would really appreciate it. Once the leeks have softened and turned a bit translucent and the anchovy fillet has completely dissolved, after about 5 to 10 minutes, add in a couple of cloves of minced garlic. Stirring constantly, cook the garlic until it's very fragrant, about a minute longer. Then, pour over a couple of teaspoons of soy sauce. This, again, will add a bit more complexity to the broth. Now it's time to add your parsnips back into the pot. Stir this all to combine, and then pour over your vegetable broth. If you're not using homemade veggie broth in this recipe, just make sure you're using a low-sodium brand of store-bought broth. The saltiness added by both the soy sauce and the anchovy will be a bit overpowering if you also add in a bunch of salty veggie broth, so that's just something to be aware of. Give everything in the pot a good stir to make sure it's all combined, and bring the soup up to a gentle simmer. Cook the soup until the parsnips are tender but still have some bite to them, about 10 to 15 minutes longer. Once the parsnips have cooked through, stir in a dash of apple cider vinegar. This gives it a bit of brightness and a touch of acidity, which also adds to the complexity of the broth. Lemon juice would work well here too. Now it's time to add your kale. If you don't like kale, feel free to substitute it with any other hearty leafy green that suits your fancy. Something like chard or beet greens would work great here. You could also leave the greens out altogether, but I really think they add something to the soup. I wouldn't have included them if I didn't. Let the soup simmer for another few minutes just to wilt and soften the kale a bit. Taste to adjust for seasoning, adding a bit more salt and pepper if necessary. Now all you need to do is serve and enjoy. If you like this recipe, please make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my next videos. Thanks!